In Liverpool, memories of a vibrant city, the city between the wars, we witnessed police and power station staff at Lister Drive assembling gas masks in 1939. They were preparing for a war expected but not yet declared. In fact, civil defence organisations started to get ready as early as 1937. In mid-1939, we saw the Mauritania leave on her maiden voyage. A few months later, she was stripped of her luxurious fittings and converted into a troopship. The invasion of Poland by Hitler's army on the 1st of September 1939 meant we were at war on the 3rd. We now take a look at Liverpool in the 40s and 50s, a period of 20 years of enforced change. Outwardly, as far as Liverpool was concerned, city life continued fairly normally for another year, apart from preparations for possible air attack. The port was vital for the importation of food and raw materials for the whole of the kingdom and had to be kept open at all costs. Behind the scenes, our civil defence became organised. Air raid wardens and the Home Guard became familiar sights. The blackout was here to stay for the rest of the war. Many people joined the services and prepared to fight overseas. Buildings were protected with sandbags just in case. Barrage balloons were launched to protect the city from low-flying enemy aircraft. Then, in August 1940, Liverpool's own war began. It was to last 9 months until the notorious May Blitz of 1941. The Nazis hoped to destroy the port, but the people of Liverpool and Merseyside fought back, and in spite of wholesale destruction in the port of Liverpool and the city, and amid the enormous strain on resources, work carried on. The first bombs to cause a fatality in the area were dropped on Trent and Wirral on the 9th of August 1940, when 1 person was killed. The first bombs dropped on Liverpool fell on August the 17th, with some damage caused to the overhead railway. Over the ensuing months, many fires stretched the resources of the fire and civil defence services. Tragically, looking around the city centre, familiar landmarks are affected, such as South Castle Street and Lord Street. In the distance, the cathedral still stands, although much damage was suffered. The liver birds still look down on a scene of destruction. Perhaps the Luftwaffe spared them to act as a landmark for air attack. The old custom house was bombed and later demolished, the sad loss of a wonderful classical building. The site of Littlewood's store today was completely cleared. Robinson Cleaver and other businesses were on the site at the start of the war. In the background, on the other side of Church Street, Marks and Spencer and Bon Marché, now occupied by George Henry Lee, still stand. In the foreground is the courtyard of Bluecoat Chambers, Liverpool's oldest building. From the opposite viewpoint, large parts of Bluecoat are gutted and destroyed. Much later, it was restored to its former glory. Blacklers was gutted by fire during the May Blitz of 1941. Remember how it used to be in the 20s and 30s? The basement would be flooded to become an emergency water supply. Lewis's, virtually destroyed in May 41, would partially reopen during the war. Cranes on top of the building aided reconstruction. Ranelagh Street outside is completely blocked for a time. A barrage balloon is floating outside the Mersey Tunnel entrance. These were a familiar sight over Merseyside to aid protection against enemy aircraft. St George's Hall sustained much damage. Part of Liverpool Museum area has become a fire station. There are scenes of devastation on all sides in Lime Street as people try to carry on normally. St Luke's Church, a familiar sight at the top of Bowl Street, is seen with its nave and chancel completely destroyed, but the tower and clock still standing. Today, the church remains unrestored with its pond facade enclosing a peaceful garden. It stands as a monument to Liverpool's wartime years and its battle against the Luftwaffe. By contrast, Liverpool's parish church of St Nicholas, a riverfront landmark for centuries, has been fully restored. This seems an impossible task, looking at the amount of destruction in these pictures. A small temporary church was built within the ruins in 1943. But what of homes and people? In some areas, churches, shops and familiar terraced houses were completely destroyed. Altogether, 120,000 houses were damaged or destroyed. Neighbours and rescue parties toiled day and night in search of victims. There were direct hits on air raid shelters, killing groups of people. Blood, tears, toil and sweat were the order of the day. In the 8 days of the May Blitz, Liverpool suffered over 1,400 dead and over 1,000 seriously injured, which was more than the total of the previous 9 months. Bootle suffered 400 dead, Birkenhead 400, and Wallasey 300 over 9 months of bombing raids. Emergency rest centres and canteens established in halls, cinemas and schools helped solve the problem of feeding. Many homeless were sent to places away from the bombing to live with other families, and many children were evacuated to North Wales. The May Blitz was Hitler's last major attack when his attention changed to the Russian front. Liverpool was at last given some respite. Liverpool's own war was largely over. The job of reconstruction began immediately, and the city set about recovering as best it could. There was a legacy of 50,000 homeless in Liverpool, with another 25,000 in Bootle. Liverpool and the Merseyside boroughs were not defeated. Life had to go on, ships had to be unloaded, the war was still being fought in other parts of the world. All thanks were due to the civil defence services and the people. The Lord Mayor recognised this and penned a grateful message of recognition to the citizens of the city. By the end of May, the port was fully operational again, and it was able to continue to support the Battle of the Atlantic, having already played a major role. This continued to rage at sea. Food and raw materials were vital to the general war effort of the country, and ships carrying these had to run the gauntlet of enemy warships and submarines on their way to Liverpool, and many were sunk by enemy action. In the midst of Liverpool's destruction, tucked away in a reinforced corner basement in an office block behind the town hall, was housed the control centre for Britain's Battle of the Atlantic. The control room today has been preserved as part of our heritage. It's a museum in commemoration of the battles at sea and the approaches to the port of Liverpool. Signs of the war coming to an end were the arrival of hospital ships returning injured and ex-prisoners of war to the UK. Men would travel home or to hospitals throughout the country. Liverpool's war and the war in Europe and with Japan ended. However, food rationing would continue for many years. The Liverpool Gas Company, based in Radiant House, Bowl Street, designed a vegetable-based recipe for the post-war family. Good for today, perhaps.